You have been told to drink more water to lower blood pressure naturally, and you have been doing it, but your numbers are still not where they need to be. Here is what nobody is telling you. Plain water is not enough. What you add to your water can transform it from a passive hydration tool into an active cardiovascular intervention. And there is one specific addition the clinical research consistently supports for natural blood pressure reduction that most people managing hypertension have never tried. I am going to show you exactly what it is, the precise way to use it, and the science behind why it works fast. Stay with me, because at the end of this video is the detail that makes the difference between results you can measure and results that never show up. What you need to add to your water is lemon juice, specifically fresh squeezed lemon juice, and I want to be very clear right from the start that this is not a folk remedy or a wellness trend. Adding lemon to water to lower blood pressure naturally and fast is backed by specific, documented mechanisms that target the cardiovascular system in ways that plain water simply cannot. Most people hear this and think it sounds too simple to be real. That reaction is completely understandable, and it is also exactly why so many people with high blood pressure are sitting on one of the most accessible cardiovascular tools available and never using it properly. Lemon contains a concentrated profile of bioactive compounds including flavonoids, citric acid, vitamin C, and potassium, and each of these interacts with a different and real driver of elevated blood pressure. Together, they create a combined effect that is genuinely greater than the sum of its parts, and the research has been documenting this for long enough that the evidence is difficult to dismiss. The first mechanism is the one most people least expect, and it starts with the flavonoids. Lemon is particularly rich in hesperidin and areocitrin, two flavonoids that have been studied specifically for their effect on vascular function and blood pressure. Hesperidin works by improving endothelial function, which is the ability of the inner lining of your arteries to produce nitric oxide and regulate arterial wall tone. Nitric oxide is the molecule your arteries use to relax and widen, reducing the resistance your heart has to pump against. When endothelial function is compromised, nitric oxide production drops, arteries stiffen, and blood pressure climbs. This is one of the structural reasons blood pressure rises with age, and one of the reasons it can feel so resistant to simple lifestyle changes when the endothelial damage has been building for years. Hesperidin directly supports the signaling pathway that restores nitric oxide production, and it does so through a mechanism that no amount of plain water can replicate. The second mechanism involves the citric acid content of lemon and its effect on arterial calcium deposits. Calcium accumulation in arterial walls is a significant contributor to arterial stiffness and elevated systolic blood pressure, particularly in older adults. Citric acid forms soluble complexes with calcium ions, which helps reduce the calcification process in arterial tissue over time. This is a slow and cumulative effect, not something you will feel in a single day, but consistent daily lemon water consumption over weeks and months produces a measurable reduction in arterial stiffness that directly translates to lower systolic readings. The combination of reduced arterial stiffness and improved nitric oxide production addresses the two primary structural drivers of elevated blood pressure simultaneously, which is why lemon water consistently outperforms plain water in cardiovascular research. The third mechanism is potassium-mediated vasodilation. A single lemon contains around 80 milligrams of potassium, and while that may seem modest, the form in which lemon delivers potassium is important. The potassium in fresh lemon juice enters circulation alongside the citrate and flavonoid compounds, which means it arrives in a biochemical environment that amplifies its vasodilatory effect on vascular smooth muscle. Potassium directly counteracts the vasoconstrictive effect of sodium by relaxing the membrane potential of arterial smooth muscle cells, allowing arteries to physically widen and reducing peripheral vascular resistance. For anyone whose blood pressure is being driven partly by a high sodium to potassium ratio in their diet, and that is the majority of people with hypertension, this potassium input through lemon water adds a consistent daily counter to the sodium load their arteries are managing. Before we go further, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and how long you have been managing high blood pressure. If this is already making sense of something you have been frustrated about for a long time, subscribe to Cardivive and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. If this is helping, type "great" in the comments or "improve" if it doesn't. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism followed participants who consumed lemon juice daily alongside regular walking and found significantly greater reductions in systolic blood pressure compared to a control group doing the walking alone. The researchers attributed this to the combined effect of the flavonoids on endothelial function and the citric acid on arterial compliance. Another study examining aerocitrin supplementation found measurable improvements in flow-mediated dilation, a direct laboratory measure of endothelial function, in participants with mild hypertension over a 12-week period. These are not anecdotal observations. They're controlled measurements of real arterial changes produced by the specific bioactive compounds in lemon. The vitamin C content of lemon adds another layer that is particularly relevant to people managing blood pressure long-term. Vitamin C is one of the most potent water-soluble antioxidants available, and it plays a direct role in protecting endothelial cells from the oxidative stress that damages their ability to produce nitric oxide. Every time your blood pressure spikes, whether from stress, a high-sodium meal, or poor sleep, oxidative stress in your arterial walls increases. Over time, that cumulative oxidative burden degrades endothelial function progressively, which is one of the reasons blood pressure tends to become harder to manage as years go by and why people who have been dealing with hypertension for a long time often find that the same lifestyle changes that would have worked a decade ago no longer produce the same results. The daily antioxidant input from fresh lemon juice provides consistent protection against this oxidative degradation and supports the gradual recovery of endothelial function that makes blood pressure readings more stable and more responsive to other lifestyle interventions. There is a fourth mechanism that almost nobody talks about, and it connects lemon water to blood pressure through the gut microbiome. The polyphenol in lemon juice, consumed consistently, shift the composition of the gut microbiome toward bacterial strains that produce short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate. Butyrate has a documented anti-inflammatory effect on the vascular endothelium and reduces the systemic low-grade inflammation that is one of the upstream drivers of hypertension in people who are otherwise doing reasonable things for their health. The gut-to-cardiovascular axis is one of the most exciting and underutilized areas of blood pressure management, and lemon water is one of the simplest ways to start influencing it in the right direction every single day. What makes lemon water particularly valuable as a daily blood pressure intervention is the combination of how accessible it is and how precisely it targets the mechanisms that drive hypertension. Most people with elevated blood pressure have at least two of the following underlying drivers: endothelial dysfunction, reducing nitric oxide production, arterial stiffness from calcium accumulation and collagen cross-linking, a sodium to potassium imbalance driving vasoconstriction, chronic oxidative stress degrading arterial wall health, and systemic low-grade inflammation disrupting vascular signaling. Lemon water addresses all five of these simultaneously through its flavonoid, citric acid, potassium, vitamin C, and polyphenol content. No single pharmaceutical drug addresses all five. No supplement stack of comparable cost comes close. The fact that this intervention costs a fraction of what most people spend on blood pressure supplements every month and works through more cardiovascular pathways than most of those supplements combined is one of the most quietly remarkable things in the entire natural health space. A glass of fresh lemon water every morning does this, and it costs almost nothing. Here is something worth knowing before we continue. Lemon water is powerful on its own, but it reaches its full potential when the foods you eat every day are supporting your blood vessel function rather than quietly undermining it. That is why I put together a complete heart health nutrition guide in my Etsy shop. It covers the specific foods shown to lower blood pressure naturally, the dietary patterns that support vascular health, and the common foods most people think are heart healthy, but the research says otherwise. The link is in the description. Here is where most people lose the majority of the benefit without realizing it, because preparation matters far more than most people appreciate. The form of lemon you use, the time of day you drink it, the quantity, and what you pair it with all have a documented effect on how much of the therapeutic benefit you actually receive. Getting these details right is genuinely what separates people who try lemon water for a month and see no change from people who try it for a month and watch their readings start moving in the right direction. And the frustrating thing is that most people who try lemon water and feel let down are doing one or two of these things wrong without knowing it, which means they are not failing because the intervention does not work. They are failing because nobody ever told them how to do it correctly. The first and most important point is that bottled lemon juice is not an acceptable substitute for fresh squeezed. Most commercially bottled lemon juice is pasteurized at high temperatures, which degrades the heat-sensitive flavonoids, particularly hesperidin and eryocitrin, by a significant margin. The vitamin C content is also substantially reduced by the pasteurization and storage process. The research on lemon water and blood pressure consistently uses fresh lemon juice, and the bioactive compound concentrations that produce the documented effects are only reliably present in juice squeezed from a fresh lemon. This single detail explains most of the gap between people who report meaningful benefit from lemon water and people who report none at all. The correct preparation is the juice of half to 1 full lemon in 250 to 300 milliliters of room temperature or warm water, consumed first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, at least 20 minutes before eating or drinking anything else. The empty stomach timing is important because it allows the flavonoids and citric acid to be absorbed without competition from other food compounds, maximizing their bioavailability and ensuring that the peak concentration of hesperidin and eryocitrin reaches circulation during the morning blood pressure surge, the most clinically significant window for cardiovascular intervention in people with hypertension. Warm or room temperature water is preferable to cold because cold water can cause mild arterial constriction that partially offsets the vasodilatory effect of the lemon compounds. If this content is helping, please hit that thumbs up button right now. It helps this video reach someone else managing blood pressure and wondering why their numbers are not responding. It takes 1 second and it genuinely makes a difference. The second critical mistake is adding sugar or sweeteners to the lemon water. This is extremely common and it completely undermines the cardiovascular benefit. Refined sugar acutely raises blood glucose, which triggers an insulin response that promotes sodium retention and increases the sympathetic nervous system activity that drives blood pressure higher. Artificial sweeteners disrupt the gut microbiome in ways that reduce the polyphenol fermentation pathway that produces butyrate, eliminating the gut to cardiovascular benefit entirely. Drink it unsweetened. If the tartness is genuinely difficult to tolerate, add a very small amount of raw honey, which has its own modest anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties and does not produce the harmful cardiovascular effects of refined sugar or artificial sweeteners. The third mistake is inconsistency. The endothelial recovery, arterial decalcification, and gut microbiome shift that produce the most meaningful and durable blood pressure reductions are all cumulative processes. They require consistent daily input over weeks and months. Missing 3 or 4 days per week does not simply reduce the benefit proportionally. It prevents the structural arterial changes from building on themselves the way they do with daily consistent exposure. Decide before you start that you are committing to at least 45 days of daily lemon water every morning and treat it the way you would treat a prescribed medication, something you do every day without negotiation rather than when you remember or feel motivated. The fourth mistake is expecting the benefit to show up in the first week and abandoning the protocol when early readings look unchanged. The acute effect of a single glass of lemon water on blood pressure through nitric oxide release and potassium-mediated vasodilation is real but modest on its own. The compounding effect that produces the meaningful and clinically significant reductions documented in the research requires weeks of consistent daily exposure for the endothelial improvements to accumulate, the arterial stiffness to begin reversing, and the gut microbiome to shift in a direction that supports vascular health. Most people who see genuinely meaningful results from this protocol report that the clearest changes appear between weeks 4 and 8 of consistent daily use. Before we get to what you can realistically expect, week by week, I want to come back to the Heart Health Nutrition Guide in my Etsy shop because lemon water delivers its strongest effect when the foods you eat every day are supporting rather than undermining your vascular health. The guide covers the specific food combinations that amplify the blood pressure benefits of lemon water, the heart-healthy eating patterns with the strongest research behind them, and the foods most people managing blood pressure eat regularly that are quietly making things worse. The link is in the description. Understanding what to expect at each stage of this protocol is what keeps people consistent long enough to reach the point where the results become clearly measurable. Most people quit too early not because the protocol is not working, but because they are evaluating it before the biology has had time to complete the changes that produce visible results in readings. Commit to 60 days before you draw any conclusions. That is the window the research supports for seeing the full combined effect of all four mechanisms working together consistently. In week 1 and 2, the most noticeable early changes for most people are improved digestion, slightly better energy in the mornings, and in some cases a modest reduction in blood pressure readings of 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury. This early reduction reflects the acute nitric oxide and potassium effect of daily lemon water, and it is a real signal that the cardiovascular mechanisms are activating. Do not use this window to judge the full potential of the protocol. The structural changes that produce the most durable and meaningful reductions are still in their early stages and will not be visible in readings for several more weeks. By week 3 and 4, the hesperidin-driven endothelial improvements begin to compound in a way that starts showing up more clearly in consistent home monitoring data. Most people at this stage report that their morning readings are trending noticeably lower and that they are seeing fewer of the afternoon and evening spikes that were previously making their average numbers look worse than their best readings. The gut microbiome shift is also becoming established by this point, and the reduction in systemic inflammation it produces starts contributing to more stable and consistently lower readings throughout the day rather than just in isolated morning measurements. Between weeks 5 and 8, the full combined effect of endothelial recovery, reduced arterial stiffness from the citric acid mechanism, sustained potassium-mediated vasodilation, and gut microbiome-driven anti-inflammatory activity becomes clearly visible in the data for most people who have been consistent. Average readings are typically 6 to 10 millimeters of mercury lower than at the start of the protocol. For context, that is the level of reduction that cardiovascular research consistently associates with a meaningful decrease in stroke and cardiac event risk over time. People who continue past 8 weeks frequently report that the improvements continue to build gradually and stabilize at a meaningfully lower level than where they started, reflecting the cumulative structural arterial improvements that take the longest to develop but produce the most durable outcomes of any component of this protocol. A practical note on tracking that makes a significant difference in how clearly you can see your own progress. Take your reading at the same time every morning, seated quietly for 5 minutes first, with the same monitor on the same arm. Blood pressure is acutely sensitive to activity, stress, temperature, and even posture, and readings taken under inconsistent conditions create noise that makes it almost impossible to see a genuine trend. Keep a simple daily log with just the date and both numbers. Looking back across 4 weeks of entries at the same time every morning shows the directional movement in a way that comparing individual daily readings never can. And it gives you the evidence you need to stay motivated through the weeks when the changes are real but still subtle. Plain water is a foundation. It keeps you alive and supports every system in your body. But if you are managing high blood pressure and you are only drinking plain water, you are leaving one of the most accessible and well-researched cardiovascular interventions available completely and used every single morning. Adding fresh lemon juice to your water transforms your first drink of the day into a targeted delivery of hesperidin, eryocitrin, citric acid, vitamin C, and potassium. 5 bioactive inputs working through 5 distinct and complementary mechanisms to address the real structural and biochemical drivers of elevated blood pressure. This is not about a temporary fix or a number that moves for a week and then bounces back. Done consistently, this protocol produces the kind of compounding cardiovascular improvements that change your baseline, not just your best reading of the week. Start tomorrow morning. Half a lemon in warm water, unsweetened, on an empty stomach, every single day. Track your numbers. Give it 60 days. And let the biology do what the research consistently shows it is capable of doing when you stop giving it plain water and start giving it what it actually needs. If this video gave you a clearer picture of how to lower blood pressure naturally and fast, and what you can start adding to your water tomorrow to make a real difference, please share it with someone you know who is managing high blood pressure. So many people are looking for natural approaches and have never been given clear, research-backed options. Subscribe to Cardivive and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for trusting me with your precious time and your heart health. I will see you in the next video.